Another frustrating loss for the Orange. This time it comes at home. We're going to break it down for you here as the Orange falls to Virginia 74-69, the final. We're going to get into Joe Girard because this was another rough Joe game. The Siena Joe crowd was certainly alive and well. We'll also get into some of Jim Boeheim's rotations, including what should have been done with Joe Girard. And is this it? Was that a game that could have potentially determined the tournament fate? We will get into all of that and more coming up on the Locked On Syracuse podcast.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome in. Wish it was a victory Monday for you all Orange fans out there. This is the Locked On Syracuse podcast. Tyler, Aki, and Tim Leonard. We're with you every single weekday here on the Locked On Syracuse podcast. Only place to get daily Syracuse pods. Today's episode brought to you by Sonos. Experience the game like never before with Sonos Arc, the premium smart soundbar for TV, movies, music, gaming, and more. Visit Sonos.com to learn more. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. And boy, you're going to need it because this could become therapeutic at a certain point for a lot of people joining us here on the Locked On Syracuse podcast. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast. That includes YouTube. Give us a comment, a subscription there as well. We'd love to get all your feedback and get your thoughts on the Orange whenever you comment below on the videos. So I can see, Tim, you got your Patriots sweatshirt on right now.
Yeah, big win.
In the glow of a big win. Meanwhile, we're about to dissect
Jaguars, but I'll take it.
A rough loss for Syracuse. Yeah, it is the Jaguars. But hey, at least it looks like you got the Rookie of the Year, maybe. But I don't know.
Right.
All right. Getting into this game, 74-69, really, really disheartening loss. A couple of things really stood out, but I think nothing more than the play of Joe Girard. And I think the frustrating part about Girard in this game wasn't necessarily the lack of points or any of that. Like, he didn't make a ton of mistakes. He was just kind of out there, it felt like New Year's resolution for him must have been get the steps in because it felt like he just went out there, ran a little bit, and that's what it was. Like, 3 points, 1 turnover, couple steals, 3 assists. You'd like that number to be a little bit higher. He didn't shoot the ball a whole heck of a lot. 5 total shots in this game. And for a big game like this one, I would have thought we'd see a double-digit figure from Joe Girard in the shots department.
Well, and credit to Kihei Clark, right? Because he's one of the better defenders really in the country. And that's what made this even more frustrating to watch is Kihei Clark is the perfect foil to Joe Girard. He does all the point guard things really well. And that's where Joe Girard really struggles. So it was tough to watch our guy not play like a point guard. And then on the other end, Kihei Clark is passing up open threes and making the right feeds and just doing everything that he should against the 2-3 zone. And this is now, as someone tweeted at us, year 9 of Kihei Clark doing this against Syracuse.
I feel like at least this will be the last year.
Right. I hope. I mean, it seems like it will, but it's frustrating because he can shut down Joe Girard, and he is a really good defender. And I do think the reason why Girard just didn't shoot a whole lot in this game is because of Kihei Clark. But this is what happens when Joe Girard goes up against good competition. Like, we make the joke about Siena. We're usually more supporters of Girard than others because he has had a nice start to the season. And as Jim Boeheim said post-game, his first 11 games, he called them great. I don't know if I go that far, but he said first 11 games were great. The last 2, he just hasn't been in it. And when he's not in it, this team is really vulnerable to lose to pretty much anyone. So he needs to play better than this.
Yeah, I just look at his level of interest out there. It seemed very low. And I think the same can be said about the Cornell game. It just didn't look like between the ears he was there. And that's a problem because this is a game where you need to be on your P's and Q's against a Virginia team that tactically, listen, they may not have the skill they've had in years past, but tactically, they're always going to have a really good game plan. They're always going to be really well coached as well. So for Girard, I look at this game as sort of we kind of talked about it when we were talking about the grades, right? With Joe Girard, like we each gave him somewhere in the B minus range, if I'm remembering correctly, but you never see a B or B minus performance out of him. It feels like you either get an A performance or you get somewhere in the neighborhood of a C minus, D plus, or in the case of this game, this is an F in my book for what it's worth.
No doubt. I mean, he was just running around, as you called it. It's a fair assessment of what happened. And it was good to see Boeheim finally at least give him some criticism post-game. When he's given every other player criticism, he opens again talking about how Jesse can't get to the corner, which we can talk about at some point today if you want to, because that's a whole thing that I think a lot of the fan base is upset with when he just throws Jesse under the bus. I get it. He didn't get to the corner at the start of this game, but it's also a tough responsibility to get to the corner. And he did say something interesting on that about how they basically either put Jesse responsible for the corner or they don't, and then teams can get it. And if they do that, teams can get it inside. If not, then they're going to hit threes. And it's just like a give and a take that shows you that they are very flawed defensively right now. But this is the problem with Joe Girard and really everyone but Buddy Boeheim and Jimmy Boeheim, right? Like I said this on the preview podcast, I think that when you go up against tight defense, really the only guys I count on are Jimmy and Buddy. And they're the only guys that are willing to make plays. And the problem is then it becomes ISO ball trading back and forth between those two guys because the rest of the team just can't get by anyone and can't do anything in terms of creating your own shot.
Yeah, and Buddy was fantastic in this game. I mean, he goes out there at 27 points, and it sucks, man. Like, you wish he had a little more help out there at times, because then you could be really looking at an All-American level player, because the performances that he's put up, I mean, the fact that he is going in and he had this little week-long stretch of just great performance after great performance. Like, he's back and he's playing like the Buddy that we expected from the preseason and pretty much carrying over what we saw to close out last season. But he needs Joe Girard. Like, he needs that running mate to be that formidable second scorer, third scorer along with them, because listen, Jimmy Boeheim has been great. And I think both you and I are very, very okay with him being the third scorer on this team. But you and I think we would feel a lot more comfortable if it was Girard or Swider that you could rely on game after game to be that second guy.
Yeah, and it hasn't been in these tight defensive games. So I don't know if it's going to happen or if there's going to be a flip switch. I'm just not that optimistic that things change and Cole Swider and Joe Girard kick it into gear against good competition. Like the Villanova game is another example. Buddy did not play well against Villanova, as we know, but Jimmy was the guy carrying the way when they scored 53 points. And Jimmy did go 2 for 8 from the foul line, which is terrible and unacceptable. And Boeheim called him out, Coach Boeheim, for that afterwards.
We got a great tweet, too. I believe it was from our guy, Zach, who always loves our Sienna Joe banter.
Right.
But he tweeted at us, how is this guy 2 for 8 from the free throw line? Doesn't he have a gym in his basement? And I was like, that's a great point. Like, this guy literally has a gym in his basement. He can literally go down there any day of the year and shoot free throws. He's had that access his entire life, and he goes out there and shoots 2 of 8. And this isn't an isolated incident. I mean, he has not been a good free throw shooter all year long, which is weird for a guy who has a pretty soft touch, it seems like, especially around the rim.
Yeah. And his 3-point shooting's been solid. It's kind of odd how it's gone that way. I'm glad that you shouted out Buddy, though, and gave him his props, because that is about the best 27 points I've ever seen in my life. Like the hardest 27 points scored.
Yeah.
He was making some shots that were unbelievable on the scale of difficulty. And I was wondering why Virginia didn't double team him earlier in the game, but they finally did go to it, which every team should do going forward. That's the thing that scares me, is I just feel like we're an easy team to game plan against right now, because offensively, yes, if you have a bad defense, Syracuse is going to score points. And I'm not saying our offense is bad, but what we found out here really scares me is that when you go up against good defense, Syracuse's offense is pretty easy to stop because you can't get by anyone. And then it just becomes ISO ball and all the bad habits that we've seen in years past.
Right. Like the only guy that can get to the basket and get a shot off right now is Buddy, because he's sort of got this thing down where he can dribble in, sort of like he's going to be on a lot of smaller defenders just because of the nature of his size and who else Syracuse has out there at most given times. He's usually going to be on a guy who's 6'3", 6'4", as was the case in this game when he was matched up on Beekman. And he can kind of back his way down and hit that floater shot over top of people, or at a minimum, get to the free throw line out of it.
Yeah.
And he did that to an art in this game. So that was really good to see against a really good, solid defensive team, especially schematics. But I mean, the rest of listen, this team will not win a basketball game this year where you've got at least 3 starters giving you under 10 points. They're just not. They're not going to win a game like that. It doesn't matter how well Buddy plays.
I do think Jesse needs to get the basketball more in these type of games. When a Cole is struggling, when a Joe Girard is struggling, just run more plays for him. He did some really nice stuff. A couple like fake handoffs. That crazy shot at the end of the first half was cool because he's developed as an offensive player. Right. So let's use him.
That was Giannis-esque at the end of the first half with the strides that he took from the corner and getting his shot off over someone. I thought that was spectacular, but he was playing really poorly in that first half. Probably his worst half of basketball that he's had at Syracuse. So we're going to break down some of his game and the rotations that we saw in that first half as well. And just what we saw out of that first game of the new year. But first, want to tell you about Get Upside with an incredible app. Everyone who buys gas needs to know about Get Upside. My listeners are making up to 25 cents for every gallon of gas every time they fill up. So just download the free Get Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and use the promo code SCORE and get a bonus 25 cents per gallon on your first fill up. That's up to 50 cents cash back. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using Get Upside. Just download the app for free and use the promo code SCORE to get up to 50 cents per gallon cash back on your first tank. Some people who drive a lot are making as much as $200 to $300 a month in cash back, and there's no catch. The cash back gets added right to your account. You can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Get Upside app and use the promo code SCORE to get up to 50 cents per gallon cash back on your first tank. That's promo code SCORE. And hey, you may be making that trip back to Syracuse at some point if you're a college student, or if you're driving your child back to college or whatever, get that Get Upside app and score big with some cash back on your fill-ups. Okay, let's get into some of the rotations here, because this was really puzzling for a lot of Syracuse fans. I think a number of things at first. I do want to start with this. We'll get to Symir because that's one of the burning ones, but Jesse getting yanked 2 minutes in. His defensive rotations and getting out to the corner. And again, it's not an easy assignment out there for him to get corner to corner and then also sort of be in charge of rebounding and patrolling the paint as well. Like, what he is being asked to do is not easy. We have to lay that out first. But at the same time, it is mostly not easy because the wings are not helping him out. And Jim Boeheim yanking Jesse Edwards. I didn't think we'd see Jesse Edwards out of the game in less than 2 minutes unless he had 2 fouls. But he had 0 fouls and was yanked within 2 minutes because he let up a couple threes right out of the gate.
Yeah, that happened one other time this year. I can't remember the game, but it was the same thing. Like at the start of the game, he just didn't get to the corner and he yanked him for Frank. And it felt like Frank played more minutes than normal in this game. Than I looked down at the box score. He played 9 minutes. Jesse plays 30. What's concerning too is Jesse had 5 rebounds in 30 minutes. He's just got to be better. And I know that's like hard to say because he has gotten a lot better and he's taken a step to get to this point where we're criticizing him. And I'm sure a lot of people probably are defending him and think that, you know, I might be too hard on him at times, which is probably fair. But also, I do think the consensus of the fan base thinks of him as this great defender right now. And he's not. Like, he's not rotating sometimes. And when you really dive into it, I think he's overrated on defense based on what the consensus of the fan base thinks. I'm not saying he's a terrible defender, and I do think the forwards are probably worse at defending than him, and that's part of why he struggles, and that's part of why he's being tasked to go to the corner. Like, that's not how the 2-3 zone used to be, but it is a little, like, at times, sometimes I watch the Twitter conversation. I don't think we realize that, in my opinion, Jesse is not defending to the level that we need him to defend right now, especially over the past couple games.
And listen, our criticisms of Jesse are strictly defensive based. I have zero complaints with what he's brought offensively. In fact, he has far exceeded both your and my expectations of what he can be as an offensive player. And again, he's not going to score double figures every game, but the fact that he is a threat every single game offensively is a good thing for this basketball team right now. But you're right. Defensively, it's a problem because not only does he not get to the corners and sort of fulfill his role, but he gets himself into foul trouble too. Every single game. This is another game where he fouls out. And it feels like he almost picks them up in rapid fire succession. And then it really throws Syracuse out of their game plan because they're thinking to themselves, okay, we're going to have Jesse out there for an extended period of time because he doesn't have any fouls or he only has 1 foul. And then all of a sudden he picks up 2 or 3 quick ones. And it's like, damn, like we just had this whole sort of thing laid out where we could depend on Jesse, get him a lot of these minutes, maybe even start to tailor some of the offense to him. And all of a sudden you have to pull him out of the game.
Another thing with his defense, and this is something that Eric Devendorf, Chris Joseph brought up on the Scorers Table podcast last week, how he needs to be talking more. He's the anchor of the zone. I thought this was kind of an interesting perspective from them because they basically said, look, if you're the anchor of the zone, communication, you're the guy that's the quarterback, that's telling everyone where they need to be. And I do worry sometimes that Jesse is maybe not, I don't know him that well, but just judging, he's not a rah-rah, like, leader.
He seems like
guy.
A shy guy. Yeah.
He seems like a shy guy. And he needs to be physical, tough. Like, that's the best defenses Syracuse have had. They've had that anchor in the back that's willing to crash into someone for a rebound, that's willing to get on people for not getting to their rotations, their assignments. And it doesn't feel like he has that in him, which I guess I don't really blame him because he's a younger player compared to a Jimmy or a Buddy, and it's sort of a tough thing to get on him in that situation. But I thought it was interesting when Chris Joseph and Eric Devendorf said that, because it's like, yeah, that's so true. We don't have that guy in the anchor spot that people are worried about. And there are a lot of times, even Cole in this game, Reese Beekman goes and takes a rebound away from him. He's smaller than Reese Beekman, smaller than Cole Swider. And then guys go up and get rebounds away from Jesse that are 6'5", 6'6", and that just can't happen. We got to be tougher than that.
Yeah. You know, it's funny that you bring up the talking thing, because just looking at the starting lineup, I see 4 guys that I would consider to be talkers and like great communicators out there on the floor. Jimmy, Buddy, Cole, and Joe. I would consider
Buddy
all
was
those
talking
guys
some crap in this game.
Yeah,
I like to see that. That was awesome.
I can see all those guys yapping and also be good communicators on the floor as well, in terms of like, okay, you got to be here, you got to be in this spot, and then like calling each other out and holding each other accountable. And I wonder if that sort of intimidates Jesse, and maybe it feels like, oh, if they're all talking, I don't have to do as much.
Yeah, it could be. He needs to be more of a leader for us, which is
I'm not saying it's right. But yeah,
no, I think you have a good point there. It's frustrating because I don't think that's the thing that's going to happen overnight either. He probably needs to grow and become better of a player and just have more trust in himself before he's, talking and yelling at other people. And not even yelling, that's the wrong word, but just communicating, like being that guy in the back half of the zone that they need, because that's my biggest complaint with watching this team. And it stems from personnel, and I think we're in agreement here that a lot of what we're seeing is a lack of recruiting and a lack of talent, but also not crashing the glass, not playing with the same edge, intensity, physicality that the Syracuse teams used to play with. And I just don't like watching teams that don't play with that edge and that heart. And I'm not saying Syracuse doesn't play hard. It's just they're a finesse team compared to a physical team. And when they go up against teams that play physical this year, they've been exposed in that regard.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the frustrating things about Joe, too, is we've seen him be that scrappy guy, that uber competitive guy. And then there's a lot of games like this one where it's not just he takes his foot off the gas. He's not even in the damn car when it comes to it. And like he's just not there mentally. So let's get into Symir, because he ends up playing just 10 minutes in this game. And I thought he played 10 really effective minutes. He had a really critical offensive rebound that led to a Buddy 3 that I believe pulled it within 3 for Syracuse late in the game, gave him a chance. He finished coast to coast in transition on one play. He didn't turn the ball over in his 10 minutes out there. It just felt like he was making a lot of big plays. He was standing up defensively, I thought, as well. And you just didn't see him sort of reap the rewards of him playing well. I felt like there were a number of times where he should have been out there.
I mean, if there was ever a time for Jim Boeheim to say, hey, Joe Girard, you sit on the bench for the last couple minutes here, which I guess he did do a couple times with Kadari, but I'm sure most of the fan base would argue he should have done that more. This was it. I mean, give Symir the last couple minutes. We sort of had a nice stretch there when he turned him, and I thought it took too long for him to go to Symir, even though it was, I'm not a huge Symir fan, and he's not going to score a ton for you. And I guess when they're double teaming Buddy, he's not the greatest option to have, like standing in the corner for 3 or as another player on the court. But Joe wasn't doing anything out there. And you're right. When Joe can't get by someone, which he couldn't against Kihei Clark, he really doesn't add a ton to your team right now. He's been shooting the basketball great up until the last couple games, but he's never been a guy that's been able to create against tight defense. So that's why I would have liked to have seen Symir a lot earlier.
So it's one of those things with Joe, too, where we talk about this a number of times. We've said it with Buddy. We've even said it with Girard. When they take away your rock, what's your paper and scissors? And I think the one guy who does this really, really well on this team is Cole Swider. When he's not shooting the basketball well, he's going to go out there, get some rebounds. He had 3 assists in this game. We've seen a number of times this season where Cole Swider's shot has been absolutely neutralized, but he looks for other ways to impact the basketball game. Joe Girard does not have that gear in him right now. And that's the frustrating part. And that's why when this is happening, you want to see that minutes gap be closed a little bit between Symir and Joe. And I don't know if maybe Jim Boeheim sort of had shell shock from seeing Symir against some pressure, turn the ball over in the backcourt a couple of times. I can't remember if it was the Brown or Cornell game where this happened, but it's one of those
Cornell,
things where,
I think, right?
It's one of those things where Symir played a really, really strong game and should have been given more minutes. And one of the crazy parts is the personnel for some of the sets that you wanted to run in this game were tailored perfectly for Symir from a defensive standpoint. Like I tweeted this out. There was one point where where Jim Boeheim called timeout and he subs in Joe for Symir and they were going to go to a full court press. When you're taking a timeout, you should be putting Benny in and you should be putting Symir in, because those are guys that thrive in the press and actually can get you a couple stops and at least make life difficult for the opposition given their athleticism and their length.
Yeah, it's just, again, his blind loyalty to Joe Girard is a little much at times. And that's why Kadari Richmond's at Seton Hall, and we don't have to go down that rabbit hole again.
I saw him in a Fox Sports promo for the upcoming college basketball weekend.
Oh, no.
I don't even know. I can't remember who Seton Hall is, but it's a Kadari dunk that you'll see first thing.
Oh, gosh. Well, it's just frustrating because I don't think Symir, and he's not great. I'm not, again, going to advocate for him to play 20, 25 minutes. But in a game like this where he's doing some good things and Girard's doing a lot of not so good things, then give him a chance to finish the game. That's all we're asking for.
Right, exactly. Or at least put him in some crucial sets. Like offensively, you probably want Joe out there still, even when he is struggling a little bit. But like Symir, from a defensive standpoint, if you're setting up a press, you want to have Symir out there.
Yeah, I don't know why we're pressing no athletes out there and we're throwing out a press. It's just not going to work. And I think they were definitely trying to get in transition in this game. And then you realize that, and I've said this a lot, that Syracuse needs to play in transition more, but also you think about who they have. I encourage them to get in transition because sometimes I feel like that's where they'll get their best 3 looks, but other times it feels like they just don't really have the team equipped to do that.
Yeah, and this would have been a tough game to get in transition too, because Virginia is a team that likes to get back on defense.
When you're going against a half-court Virginia, you got to at least try to get some of those buckets to help you out a little bit.
Yeah. I do want to real quick, and before we get into like the overarching theme of this loss, I do want to talk a little bit about Benny Williams, because I actually thought he put together a nice little performance here. Played 12 minutes in this game. Remember, not too long ago, we were talking, would Benny even get any run in ACC play? He ends up playing the most minutes out of anybody off the bench. And I think it's largely because of what he contributed defensively in this game. He found himself in the right spot at the right time a lot defensively. Even though he may not have the numbers with blocks or steals to sort of show for it, I really liked what I saw from him. And I think he makes life a lot easier on Jesse as well. I think that pairing of Jesse and Benny on the floor together defensively is really, really good for Syracuse because it takes some of the pressure off of Jesse. Benny can be that sort of weak side guy that really helps out. And I just like what I see out of Benny. I think he's put together 3 really strong games defensively. Now it's going to be getting that offensive game back into motion to really keep him on the floor in ACC play.
Hopefully a preview of what's to come. And, it was tough watching this game for a number of reasons, but also it got me thinking in the second half when we were so reliant on Jimmy and Buddy to score the basketball and pretty much do anything offensively that, gosh, next year might be really tough because those guys aren't going to be there. And then it's Joe, and I don't really see Cole Swider coming back regardless of how the season ends, but maybe him and Benny and Jesse, and maybe Frank comes back, although he's not really getting the minutes he probably wanted at the start of the year. So who knows where his head's at. But yeah, the offense next year is really concerning when you think about, I don't really see Joe Girard getting to another level than he's at right now, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of know what you're going to get with Joe. It's hot and cold. It's going to be like that throughout his career. And listen, he might go out there against Miami and put up 18, 20 points. Like, that's just the player.
Yeah, he probably will.
That's just the way it goes.
He's doing it against tough defense that we're concerned about.
Yeah, but overall, I did want to shout out Benny because I did like a lot of the things that he did defensively. And I saw a couple of moments, too, where he was a little more aggressive on offense. And he had that one move in the second half where he drove to the basket, beat a guy. He saw he had the mismatch on him. I can't remember who it was. It may have been even Kihei Clark. And he just backed his ass down all the way into the post and gets up near the rim. And unfortunately, there's a weak side blocker there. He's not going to win a lot of 2-on-1s. Not a lot of players are. But just that aggression to get to the rim and sort of get up a shot and just identify the matchup, too. I think that was a really good thing. Again, the points weren't there. You only had the 2 free throws in this game, but it's a building process with him offensively. But I really like what I'm seeing defensively out of him. And I think to go along with the point that I made about him making life easier on Jesse, it reminds me a little bit of what we saw when Robert Braswell was out on the floor with Jesse Edwards. It was just a better defensive team. And that's, I think, where we're kind of at right now with Benny Williams.
Yeah, I thought he made that 3, too. Went in and out. It was a big shot, maybe 7 or 8 minutes left. So I thought it was one of his better performances overall on the offensive end. And we need him, man, because the way this team is trending, it's like maybe he can be the light at the end of the tunnel here at the end of the season.
Yeah. All right, we're going to get into the end of the season because we want to talk about what this loss means in the big picture of everything right now for Syracuse. But first, it's the new year, so that means New Year's resolutions. If yours is about getting fit or eating healthier, make sure that plan includes Built Bar. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar and maybe even better than a candy bar because Built Bar makes it easy to stick to your resolution. It tastes so good, you'll want to eat it. Unlike other protein bars that can be waxy, chalky, or taste like a chemical spill, you want to eat healthy, but it just gets so boring. By like week 3, you're thinking, this is not worth it. Where's the chocolate? Well, guess what? Built Bars are covered in 100% chocolate, and they're healthy for you as well. Just 130 calories while having just 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar, which usually has around 240 calories and 30 grams of sugar. So here's an idea for the new year. Go to all of your secret treat stashes at home, the pantry, office, car, wherever it may be, throw out all the sugary or calorie-filled treats and replace them with Built Bars. So when you're craving a snack or treat, you can reach for something that's healthy and tastes incredible. And they've got a number of flavors to choose from: coconut almond, peanut butter brownie, raspberry, cookies and cream, salted caramel, mint brownie, and so many more. In fact, Built is always coming out with new limited time flavors as well. So check out Built.com often to see what's new. Go to Built.com, use the promo code, and get 15% off your order when you punch in LOCKED15. That's Built.com, promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off. So, Tim, by my count, today is our first show of the new year. So, by the way, Happy New Year to everyone.
Yeah.
And we're already talking about, we're 1 for 1 now on talking about Syracuse and are they going to make the NCAA tournament. So we've hit that number. We're 1 for 1 so far in the new year. But this loss is one of those games where you look at the schedule, and once you head into the bulk and the meat of conference play, you start doing the win-loss game on your pocket schedules. And I think at the beginning of this conference play, this reboot of conference play, you had this one in as a win. So now you've got yourself kind of searching for a little bit of help now the rest of the way. Again, this ACC, it is putrid right now. I mean, you're looking at maybe 4 teams getting into the NCAA tournament. And at this point, you're going to have to make up a lot of ground. Just looking at KenPom right now, they've pegged Syracuse to go 9-10 in the conference. Before this Virginia game, they had them at 10-9.
Right.
And you've got 2 games coming up now on the road against Miami, on the road against Wake Forest, both in as losses. You're going to have to make up ground, and you're going to have to win both of these games.
Yeah, it seems like every game in the ACC this year is just going to be sort of a toss-up for Syracuse. A lot of these games are probably going to go down to the wire. Yeah, I mean, the ACC is really bad, but also Syracuse is just not a good basketball team right now.
I mean, they're part of the problem,
right?
Like,
that's why it's hard.
When you want your conference to be great, there are certain, when you're looking at the ACC, all right, and when you say what makes a great ACC, it is when Duke is good. It is when Carolina is good. It is when Virginia is good. You probably like it when Louisville and Syracuse are good as well. And then you have a couple of other teams that are uplifting you. I maybe forget Florida State as well as a team that you like to be good. Those are the teams that kind of carry the conference. And Syracuse is part of the problem this year. They're not pulling their weight right now. And that's what makes this another disappointing iteration of the ACC.
Yeah, and there was definitely a world today where we got on this podcast and said, whoa, they're 2-0 in the ACC, and they have wins over, pretty brand name programs here in Florida State and Virginia. Maybe they can come back from this.
Teams that beginning of the season you would have penciled in LL, right?
Probably,
yeah. A loss on the road against Florida State and probably a loss against Virginia at the beginning of the season if you had to do this exercise.
But again, I made this point before. If you are playing the game of, they're going to win more ACC games, that's all good and well, but they're not going to get to the quad one wins that you need. I think really this team needs the ACC tournament run of some sort and probably even winning the ACC tournament to make it at this point. I know that they will probably find a run in them here of 5 or 6 wins, but I just don't think, given where they're at and given how much value that's going to give you, 5 or 6 wins this year in the ACC compared to other years, that it's enough to get you firmly back on the bubble at any point this season. And also, I just don't see the way this team is playing, them picking off wins against higher echelon teams. I know there's not a whole lot in the conference, but everyone has had this mindset of this team all year long that, they're going to pull off some upsets and win some games they shouldn't win. But anytime they go up against a good defense, this offense folds and it gets totally exposed. So I view this team as more winning games against bad defense and winning games against the right matchups, and then losing games and getting exposed against tough matchups. And those tough matchups are Duke, UNC, those type of games that they have to win if they want to get back on the bubble. I don't really see them winning any of the quad one opportunities they have the rest of the way.
So right now, I mentioned Ken Pom projects them to have 9 wins in the conference. You already have 1 under your belt in that game against Florida State. You're probably going to need like 12 plus some, you're going to need 13 plus some ACCs, I would guess, if you're going to be in the tournament conversation right now. And that's going to be tough. You're going to have to flip some projected losses to projected wins. And where are you going to find those 4 right now? I mean, you've got a good chance this week on the road against Miami, on the road against Wake Forest. But you got to go out and play these games. You got to go out, and you're going to need to see who that third guy that you can rely on night after night is going to be. And that's what we're going to tackle on tomorrow's show, because this needs to get better. I mean, we are in the new year. This is January 2nd that we're recording this right now. And we're talking about a lot of the same problems. There's not that third guy that's sort of developing right now. So we are going to break down who I say we like power rank them tomorrow. Who are the most dependable third guys on this team? So we'll do that tomorrow.
It's going to be a tough list to power.
It is going to be a tough list.
Not a lot of dependability.
Right now. And we'll do that on tomorrow's show. We'll also get to a lot of your Twitter thoughts as well, because this needs to flip. This needs to flip. You've got a big week ahead of you here. I know that traditionally hearing a week of Miami and Wake Forest doesn't really get the blood pumping, but this week, this is a big week for them. I mean, if you go out,
I mean, that's the sad thing. They're all must wins, and it's January 1st when they're playing Virginia. I'm tired of it, but that's the nature of it. And I guess it makes for sort of heart-thumping basketball when all these games are going to be close and they mean a ton.
Yeah. I will say this, though. You go out and win these 2 this week, you erase the loss to Virginia, but you don't erase some of the other losses that you've had previously.
You're still so far away, though. I
know. Yeah. Listen. Yeah. You've still got a steep mountain to climb for sure. All right. So we've kind of laid out what's coming up tomorrow on the show. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen every single day. Tim and I will be back breaking down some more Orange hoops, including your thoughts from Twitter as well. That's all coming up on tomorrow's show. We thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.